Hi, my name is Richard Spencer, and welcome to Basic Wood Turning Techniques. If you've ever looked at a beautiful bowl or a spindle or a pen and said to yourself, man, I wish I could make something like that, well, you are in the right place. In this series, we're not going to focus on projects. Instead, we're going to concentrate on fundamental techniques that every beginner needs to know. The kind of skill that makes every project safer, smoother, and a lot more fun. When you learn wood turning through projects alone, it's easy to pick up bad habits. But when you learn the techniques first, you gain control. You're able to approach any project with confidence because you understand the principles behind the craft. That's what this series is all about, building your foundation as a turner. Some of the things you learn in the series are how to select and maintain your tools, how to set up your lathe correctly, understanding wood grain and how it affects the cuts you make, position, grip, and body movement. You'll understand the importance of keeping your tools razor sharp. And of course, you'll learn how to make clean, confident cuts. Each one of these lessons builds on the one before it. So by the end of the series, you won't just be following steps. You'll understand why each cut does what it does. And remember, everyone started where you are. But if you take the time to learn the basics, you set yourself up for a lifetime of creativity on the lathe. If this is the kind of series you've been looking for, then I'm excited to have you along for the ride. In the remainder of this video, we will cover the first 3 techniques that will enable you to find the center of a spindle and mount it on your lathe. So buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride. As I mentioned in the previous segment, we're going to look at the first 3 techniques today. But before we do that, I wanted to cover just a really basic thing. What we're talking about today is turning between centers. It's normally done with a square piece of wood of varying lengths. And you suspend it or hold it between the headstock and the tailstock. And that's where the term comes from, between centers. Now, it's normally done with a square piece of wood, and the very first thing you have to do is find the center of the end. Now, it can be done a number of different ways. You can just take a pencil and a straight edge, and you could just go between the corners. And if the piece is perfectly square, then that will find the center. But there's another way that's a little bit easier from my point of view. Sometimes actually aligning it with the corner is not as easy as it sounds. And it's easy to get off a little bit. What I use is a device like this. It's called a center finder. It's just a plastic thing. You can find it in any store that sells wood turning accessories. On one side, it has a square molded in section. The other side, it's less than square. The less than square side is used to find the center on a piece that's round. The square piece, of course, is used to find the center on a piece that's square. So you would just put it into the corner, mark it, rotate your piece, and mark again. And I actually go around a second time and get all 4 corners. Now, as you can see, the lines didn't exactly intersect. There's a gap between 2 of the lines because this piece is not perfectly square. And what you would do to find the exact center is just make your mark in between the 4 marks, where the 4 marks intersect. Now, you can do that several different ways. You can use an awl and just find the center and mark it. Or you could use a tool like this. This is a spring-loaded center punch. It has a spring in it, and as you depress the spring, you just place the point where you want it. And then as you push, you're compressing the spring, and when it gets to the end, it will go over center and make a mark. So that's how you would actually find the center, and then you need some kind of mark, made either with a center punch, spring-loaded center punch, an awl, or some other tool that does the same thing. Now I've already marked this end, so we'll do the same thing. And we now have found the center of both ends of our spindle. And that's the first technique, find the center. And we've done that. The second one we will cover in just a second. Now the second technique we will cover is how to actually mount the spindle between the headstock and the tailstock. And that requires some equipment. The most common one to use on the headstock is the spur drive. Now this has a point in the center, and it has 4 blades that are a little bit sharp. And these actually are driven into the wood to hold it. So when it's in the headstock and spinning, it will spin the work. The motor is at the headstock end. And inside your spindle is a number 2 Morse taper. And your tools also have the same taper, so they will be held by friction once they're pressed into the Morse taper in the headstock. Now there's a couple of different styles. This one is a little different. It still has the point, but here it has teeth rather than the blades. This gives you a smaller footprint, so if you're turning smaller spindles, this would be a better one to use. Now at the tailstock end, you have what we call a live center. It also has a number 2 Morse taper that goes into a taper in your quill. But the thing that makes this one special is the end spins. The shaft goes on into this portion, and there are bearings in here that support it. And this will spin with the work. And it also comes in different styles. Different manufacturers make them a little different way. This one just has a cone. This one is useful in a number of applications. But your standard one is going to be something that looks similar to this. Now, to mount the spindle, you can go ahead and put the live center in the tailstock. And it will stay in there, and this will spin. But in the headstock, the spur drive needs to actually be driven into the work. Now, to do that, you simply find the center. You've punched your hole, and you find that with the point, and that will automatically center your spur drive. Then you would take either a wooden or a plastic mallet, and you would actually drive the spur drive into the wood, about 1/16 of an inch. Now, you would never do it on top of the bed of your lathe. You would do this on a cement floor, on an anvil, or something else that's sturdy that is designed to be beat upon. So, the only other issue with driving this in is you would never ever use a metal hammer. If you hit the end of this with a metal hammer, it will deform it, and then it's not going to fit properly into that number 2 Morse taper once you deform the end of it. So you would always do that with either a wooden or a plastic mallet, and you would drive it in about 1/16 of an inch. And I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll be right back. Okay, now I've driven the spur drive into the piece of wood. It's in about 1/16 of an inch, and it's going to hold it. Then you can just take your number 2 Morse taper on the end. It slides it into your spindle. Then you advance your tailstock, and you do the same thing. You insert the point in the live center into the point in the end of the work, and then you advance it until it's tight. And now your piece is firmly mounted between centers. And that's technique number 2, to mount a piece between centers. Now, in the next segment, we'll actually turn our spindle round, and we'll do that in just a moment. Now we're ready to move on to the third technique, which is actually turning a spindle round. Now, before you actually start to turn this, there's a couple of considerations. Number 1, the very first thing you do is wear some kind of eye protection. You would never, ever operate a lathe without at least safety glasses, if not a full face shield. Now, before you turn on the lathe, you need to adjust your tool rest. Now, the tool rest is mounted on a banjo, and it can slide anywhere on the bed of the lathe. A good general rule is you want it as close to the work as you can get, reasonably speaking. And it's best if you can align the tool rest to be parallel to the center line of the lathe. Now, to do that, I just sight down across the tool rest to the ways on the bed, which are parallel to the center line. So I just sight down it, adjust it, and then I can lock it down. And now my tool rest is parallel to the center line of the lathe. The next thing is the tool rest height. Now, this is critical, and it also varies between the tool. I'll be using a spindle roughing gouge to turn it round. It's a fairly large tool. And what I want is for the part of the tool that's actually going to be doing the cutting, I want that in the center. So you would adjust the height of the tool rest to position your tool in the center. Now, if I were to change tools to, say, a spindle gouge, which is much smaller, then the tool rest height, when it's set for the roughing gouge, would not be suitable for the spindle gouge. So I would have to adjust the height of the tool rest. So you adjust the height of this tool rest and the position often as you're turning. It changes when the diameter of the work changes. It also changes when you start using a different tool. So you just have to get used to the fact that you're going to be changing your tool rest position often as you turn. Now, we have the piece mounted. We have our tool rest adjusted. So we're actually ready to turn it on. Now, the speed that you would turn to rough out a piece would be, it depends on your own level and what you're comfortable with. You should never operate this lathe at a speed that you're not comfortable with. It can go anywhere from very slow up to very fast. That's sitting at about 3,200 RPMs. Generally speaking, a good rule of thumb for roughing is about 1,200 RPMs. So I'll set that to be about 12. And the position of the tool is also important, so we might as well cover that. The roughing gouge has a bevel. The bevel is the portion of the tool that
comes in contact with the grinding wheel when you sharpen it. And there's a concept that we call ride the bevel that I'll get into in more detail in another video. But essentially, you use the bevel of the tool to support the cut that you're making. So you would never approach the work where your tool is perpendicular to the tool rest, because your bevel, this particular one, is at a 45-degree angle. So rather than being perfectly perpendicular to the tool rest, you would be over here at close to 45 degrees. The center of the tool is called the flute, and your flute can either be open or closed. Now, with the flute straight up, this is maximum open. If you rotate it 90 degrees, this is maximum closed. Now, generally, for roughing out a spindle like this, you would be about 45 degrees. So your tool should be close to 45 degrees to the tool rest, and your flute should be about 45 degrees open. And then this will allow you to make a cut the entire length of the piece. Now, it seemed like as I went, the same amount of wood came off for the entire length. That's because I was working to keep the cutting edge also parallel to the center line. Now, I did that with my index finger. Most tool rests have a space on it that's referred to as a finger guide. Now, you keep that index finger of the left hand in that groove. You lay the tool on top of the tool rest, and then you bring your index finger up into where you're in contact with it from the bottom. Your thumb is holding it from the top. Now, once you do that, you can regulate the depth of cut by keeping your index finger in the finger groove. And again, it looks something like this. Now, as the cut progresses, you're knocking off more and more of the corners, so the cut will get smoother and smoother. Now, another thing that happens as you're knocking off these corners, the distance between the wood and the tool rest increases because you're taking off more and more material. And you don't want your tool rest to be this far away from the work. So, from time to time, you would turn it off and you would readjust the position of the tool rest. And then you're ready to continue. And you want to keep doing that until the piece is round. Now, there's still just a little bit of a flat spot right here, but that's the only one. So this piece is very close to being round.
Now you notice that the piece is pretty much has a consistent diameter, the whole length. That's because I was regulating that depth of cut using my index finger in that finger groove, where I was moving the cutter exactly the same distance from the center line, from one end of the piece to the other. So you wind up with a fairly consistent diameter. And it also, if you've got a sharp tool, it's fairly smooth. And this spindle is now ready to do whatever it is you intended to do to it. From here, you would cut beads and coves to make whatever shape you intended for this particular piece. And that's it. That will show you the first 3 techniques: how to find the center of a spindle, how to mount a spindle on the lathe, and then how to turn a spindle round. Well, thank you for watching this first video in the Basic Wood Turning Technique series. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider checking the subscribe button below. It really helps creators like me. And again, thanks for watching.